Welcome to Melanated and Spiritually Woke. I'm your host, Adorable Earth Angel. I'm a holistic wellness educator of 12 years with a master's in public health, energy healing of 7 years, and have been a Black female spiritual alchemist my whole life. Each week, we'll be sharing uplifting, spiritually focused wellness practices to best support you in regaining your personal power, or we'll have special guest interviews with the same intention. This show is in service to all those listening, and especially for folks of color who are seeking information to support their physical, mental, and emotional spiritual awakening. These practices will help you live your best life. Welcome back, everybody, to Melanated and Spiritually Woke. I'm your host, Adorable Earth Angel. I have a special, beautiful guest on the show. My friend of many years through college, my friend Kevin. Kevin, just you like to introduce yourself, who you are, and what you're about?
Yeah, Kevin, Kev, that's what everybody calls me. I'm an artist called MC called KV. Was with a group called New Decades. That was me and Ryan Nicole. Currently, I've been a member, core staff member, cultural worker of Eastside Arts Alliance in East Oakland. We do a lot of art and community work, especially for third world people in Oakland, specifically East Oakland, San Antonio district, or what we know as the Dubs. And we do annually the Malcolm X Jazz Festival. Due to COVID, we couldn't this year, and then due to the rain last year, we had to cancel it, or we just held it inside. And I teach at Oakland Tech now with African American male achievement. So yeah, a lot of stuff I've been doing, and so forth. Yeah.
That's awesome. And Kevin, I brought him on the show because this is a show that's dedicated to getting a melanated perspective on spirituality, on social justice. And Kevin is, like, in my mind, one of the I've just known him to be a huge social justice warrior. And I have been on a path for 8 years to be a spiritual justice warrior. And it feels like so necessary for us to just have a conversation, merging these two identities and just coming up with like, what does this mean? How do we interpret the times we're in with the level of perspective that you're bringing and the perspective that I'm bringing. And I just think that's super valuable for people to have a conversation about the times that we're in, where we're experiencing this pandemic. What does it mean to be in this pandemic as a person of color? The spiritual overlays that goes on top of that. And then also recently, last week, huge outbreak, huge outcry for the injustices that we're seeing in police-sanctioned violence, and how that also dovetails into this experience. And so you and I were just organically on the phone, but I've been wanting to bring you on the show for a while because I'm wanting these perspectives. And I'm curious, like, I guess I'll ask you a question first, and then maybe you can go back and forth. But I'm curious, like, has your connection with justice and justice-based work, have you seen intersections of spirituality be something that's on the forefront, or is this something that's emerging more recently?
That is a great question. I think that in recent times, and when I mean recent times, I'm talking about, since that the uprising when Oscar Grant was murdered or assassinated by BART police. Yes, I definitely have seen the merge of spirituality and social justice, and I think that it has to go hand to hand. We had some conversations not too long ago, back in like 2014, when Mouth Off was happening at Air Lounge, and we were having a conversation with an Oakland poet named Mark G, and he's an elder from the 60s, right? He's a Vietnam vet elder from the 60s. And I think Ryan and I had this conversation with him, like, we felt like social justice now has to be spiritual. And to some extent, I can't really speak 100% on, like, let's say the 60s, because obviously I wasn't there, but I do recognize that one of the things about the Black Power movement in the 60s was, I'm not sure it was 100% spiritual, right? It was social justice, right? Which makes sense. And I think Malcolm had that spiritual aspect of it, obviously, right? But I feel like the new time, it has to be spiritual. It really does, because spirituality, whether somebody may like it or not, or know it or not, is the foundation to what you have to feel and where you need to be and the discipline you would need to be at if you are going to do this work. Because this work is very heavy. This work is very heavy. And at times you are going to feel like, I've given too much, I'm tired, there's no, you win, you take one step forward, two steps backward, where it's like, yo, we did this today, but guess what? The so-and-so politician in Congress just passed a law that is like super heavy on the community. Or so in that, one has to meditate. One has to be spiritual. I also, in my training, even with like martial arts and so forth, we always recognize in martial arts, in military, real military martial stuff, it is spiritual. When you look at different countries in ancient times, they make you meditate, they make you pray. You pray before you go into battle. There's no just, all right, we feel what we feel and let's go out there. Because there's no foundation and there's no discipline, So I think it is now, because I noticed a lot of folks who are part of this social justice work in the Bay Area, especially Oakland. I know, a lot of them attend, whether it's various churches. I mean, some folks I know attend certain mosques in North Oakland or East Oakland. I know some folks that are at East Bay Church of Religious Science, or what's the spiritual spot in Oakland Hills. So I noticed everybody has some kind of spiritual work. Nobody's just like, oh yeah, I'm just chilling and out here. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And because I do think it's important. And I think that you really kind of spoke to something that I feel like is core, which is that as we think about being here in the long term and creating long-term sustainable change in our communities, that there's a tie-in to recognize that having that grounding, having that practice is instrumental in ensuring that we are able to continue doing this work. A lot of the success, I'm sure you can contribute to your martial arts training. People can contribute to just different ways in which they've been working together to create that groundedness. And so you and I were having this really juicy conversation about, a couple of things. We were talking about COVID. We were talking about COVID as it relates to being in these times. And I don't know if you have any questions around that you'd like to pose to me that kind of open up a conversation to just some curiosities you've been having.
Yeah, I think that we do know that there's been a lot of, I've seen in the world, or not even the world, I can just say the United States, there's been a lot of confusion regarding COVID. And I think there's even now with what's going on with the protests and the outcry for real deal justice, not like a temporary solution like prosecuting cops. We need more than that, right? There's a lot of confusion that has been centered. And I think the confusion is also centered around what is going on in the world. I see a lot of people on social media asking questions like, why is this happening in the world? What do you feel about the world right now? I saw somebody pose a question saying, what do you feel about the world right now? And I said, yeah, me personally, I was like, well, there's always crazy times in the world. It's how you interpret it and how you deal with it. There's never, name a time in history where it was just, everything was utopia. We're all building to make a utopia, but to build and make a utopia, things have to happen. And I think that you see people with the conspiracies, you see people with the it's not real. But one thing that I definitely recognize by recognizing it's very much real, obviously, and it's affecting Black and brown communities more than anything, especially in the cities like, Oakland, Chicago, New York, being that a lot of us are essential workers. But I think the other question that I that is on my mind and other people is like, why does this feel like it's a change in time? Like the earth is doing this. It's not like, I just don't feel in me like it's this man-made thing that population control. I feel like earth is saying, take a break. And I feel like the sickness of the way of life we've lived with this overt arbitrary capitalism. We get up every morning to hop on the highway, to be in traffic, and we're always stressed out and tired. Pollution, climate change happening, not coming, but happening. I feel like it's almost like this virus was like sent to be like, yo, chill out. And I don't know, I could be crazy, but I just noticed when it happened and we all sat in the house, there was a lot of people who was like, yo, I needed this moment. I needed this moment to sit down, or I needed this moment to spend more time with my kids. I needed this moment to figure out what I was really trying to do with my life. I needed this moment to rest. And while we're doing that, I'm seeing scientific evidence that the ozone layer is healing. Pollution in all the developed, quote unquote, industrial nations such as China, Japan, most European countries, United States has gone down. LA finally has clear skies. They said the sun is kind of taking a break right now. So we're actually going to possibly have colder winters. And I'm like, in the midst of climate change, that's really, and just like everything's like nature and the universe is working together to save Earth. And it's kind of like humans need to back up for a second. Planes can't go, you can't really be on planes. These planes bring a lot of emission in the sky. So I'm just wondering that, and I know that I've been hearing this since before 2012, but I also recognize that we are in the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius is supposed to be the age of awakening, and where things are to be happening different. There's awakening of consciousness. And I always wondered in the past, just every single year, I always sit and have conversations with my friends, like, what does that mean? How is that going to happen? What does that, and I'm like, now I'm looking at, is this the shift happening right now? So I'm just wondering, like, am I crazy thinking this? Or like, what is this? What does that mean? Like, what is COVID? Is it the Earth doing this? What is the age of Aquarius? I've heard it's supposed to be into intergalactic age. And I've noticed where I'm like, yeah, it's funny or interesting how now you're starting to see NASA and the Navy and the government start openly saying, yep, we see UFOs all the time. It's like, what? So I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out. And I guess those are my big questions that I think a lot of people in my circle kind of even have too. Like, what exactly is the age of Aquarius? What does it mean? What does that mean for us? And how do we live and move going forward? Since a lot of people want to go back to being normal, but I don't believe that's going to happen. And I don't also believe that like the media is saying the new normal is pretty much we're all going to be super like in the house and nobody's going to interact with each other anymore. And we're going to live under this fear bug of getting sick. I was like, I'm not sure if that's the new normal. I think there's going to be another new normal that y'all don't even understand, So yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
It's like, no. First of all, one thing I want to say is that you're not crazy. Because I want to say that, and I want to say that to every single person of color listening, because I think far too long, people of color have been demonized for having intuition, or for having a connection to something bigger, or for having any type of thought process that deviates from the societal norms. And so that's like the first thing to say. No, we're not crazy. There we go. So this is putting that out there. So now that that's gone, there's this understanding that before you and I were even a sparkle in our mother's eye, that there were these things called big bodily planets that have been spinning forever and that have exerted an influence on Earth. And within that, like what we can see and what we're overlaying, what I talk about on the show, I talk about astrology heavily on the show, because astrology is not some sort of white person tool. Like the Africans, the Kemetics, they've been using astrology forever. The pyramids are connected to astrological bodies and astronomy and all these different sciences. And so to kind of just bring that back, I want to just reiterate that as we talk about the age of Aquarius, we're not talking about a white person understanding of the world. We're talking about a holistic understanding that we're bigger than our physical characteristics. And that's the energy of Aquarius. Aquarius is this energy, this archetype of this, I mean, literally the glyph is a person who's pouring water onto humanity. And that water represents knowledge, it represents nourishment, it represents everything that we need, everything that we're thirsting for. And it's poured, distributed evenly across everywhere. And so the age of Aquarius is ushering in us finally aligning ourselves with a sense of evolution. And what that looks like is that humans, we love humans, but humans can be so entrenched in the archetypes of what came before. Entrenched, and we see that people have built platitudes of structures just to try to maintain the status quo. Coronavirus came in, and there would have been no good time for a coronavirus to hit. People could say, well, this wasn't a good time. Like there would have never been a good time. There would have never been a convenient time to have social disruption. Right. It came in, and connecting to what you're saying, Kev, like, yeah, it came in as a manifestation of millions, if not billions of people putting out there into the universe different types of mantras, which are prayers or intentions or questions or crises. But basically humans exerting energy, like there's 7 billion of us now, exerting energy, influencing on a collective level, us going into a big shift. We were on the phone, I was telling you, we have raised our frequency to a certain degree. The age of Pisces, which is where we're coming out of, ages move backwards, by the way. Other things move, so you would think like the age of Aquarius means that then we're gonna have the age of Pisces, but actually we left the age of Pisces, we're moving into the age of Aquarius, and then like 2,000 years later, it'll be the age of Capricorn. So it goes backwards. So it doesn't go forward, it goes backwards. Ages goes backwards. So we're in the age of Pisces. That was when the age of Pisces hit. That's when Jesus got on the scene. And Jesus got on the scene, and that was this mystical moment. And Jesus was this embodiment. There was a physical embodiment of universal love. We saw the Bodhisattva, we saw Buddha, we saw Krishna, we saw all of these different types of prophets and all these ascended masters rise up. And that was the age of Pisces. And they were bringing about this love. But even in the age of Pisces, we saw shadow, because the shadow is illusion. Pisces energy can be it can be universal collective love. It also represents television and represents like the silver screen, and like you're watching the screen, but you don't see what's behind the screen. And so it's this energy of where we came from was this place of a lot of delusion. And it was a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors and screens, and all for the benefit of few. And that's also something that's characteristic that I want to speak to, Kevin, is that when you talk about where we're going as humanity, you have to recognize we're in a polarity. There's always going to be shadow, and there's always going to be light. And we're not going to ever really eradicate shadow. Just to be clear, we'd never have, like, that's just not a part of it. But what we are trying to do is, for the most part, lift everybody as close as we can and bringing them towards raising their frequency and that vibration and coming into the light. And that, for me, is the promise of why you and I were born at these times, why a lot of people listening and watching the show were born. The purpose of everyone listening right now is that you were born for this moment. You're not crazy. You were born to be all the things that led you to being whoever you are in this moment is necessary for us to uplift humanity in this new age of Aquarius. Ages come every 2,500 years. It's not like it's a big deal to be alive during the shifting of an actual age cycle. That's huge. And so you and I and people listening, there's something about us. I keep saying this, there's specific unique gifts and abilities that are here to shift us. And so this dovetails with coronavirus, because we had this thing that you said, remember you said it broke capitalism. It made it so that things can't operate as usual. People were crying and suffering. And as you mentioned, people are spending time with their children. They're laughing more. They feel that sense of relief. People are also suffering. There's people suffer. There's children who use school as a place to be safe. We have dark and shadow happening simultaneously. And a huge part of why we enter in spirituality into the mix is because we're wanting to mitigate and alleviate mass levels of suffering. And that comes in when we think about how we can build that new normal. How do you and I, Kevin, build, and everybody listening, how do we build the new normal that the coronavirus, if there was a silver lining at all, besides the pollution going down, climate change somewhat kind of being addressed, not all the way. They're saying this isn't going to do it. We still need humans to do things.
Right.
But if this is giving us a silver lining, a taste of what's possible, people are getting that break, that reset within themselves. The age of Aquarius is then them looking around saying, oh snaps, we're connected. Because a huge part of the Pisces delusion was like, I, me, my need, I, me, my need, I, narcissism, right. Me, my needs. And now Age of Aquarius breaks that down, and now it's like, oh, like this virus that was in China is in my front yard. I'm more connected to humans than I thought.
Right.
Because another mantra that people kept saying for years was, I'm lonely. I'm lonely, I'm isolated. Loneliness was the most highest peaking thing that we saw globally. So many people in the world, everyone lonely. What did this virus do? It amplified our loneliness. It said, oh, you're lonely? Oh, let me show you what lonely really looks like. And so everyone was super lonely, and this virus said, okay, well, everyone keeps saying they're lonely. Everyone's saying it. And when the law of attraction works is, if you say something over and over and over again, what do you think it's going to become, Kevin?
It's gonna manifest.
It's gonna manifest. It's gonna become your reality.
Reality. Yep.
It's gonna be a reality. So if you have billions of people being lonely, this virus, as you said, like it was made in a way that it's addressing climate change. It's addressing loneliness, and it's also addressing something that people don't really know about, that you may know about in studying martial arts. But there's in Chinese medicine form, it's grief manifests in the lungs. And what does this virus target?
The lungs.
Virus targets the lungs, which in Chinese medicine represents grief. And so people have been having a lot of grief on this planet. People have been grieving. The capitalism creates grief. You know, all of like people are in sweatshops, grief, like all this grief. And so we have this big virus that like it's doing all these things. So it's shadow and light in this virus. And I'm not, like a lot of people lost their lives. And I'm not like, I never want to try to be like, well, this virus is positive. It is great for us. But we have to recognize, like, we want to honor the people who've lost their lives and also amplify the fact that this, like, you're hitting the nail right on the head. Astrologers predicted in 2020, there would be a big, giant, permanent change. None of us knew it was going to be a virus. Nobody really could figure that out. But then again, Pisces energy also represents viruses, by the way. And we've been having a lot of Piscean energy in the flow. So that there was one indication, but people didn't say, hey, I predict a virus in 2020. People were saying, all the astrologers across the board were saying, come 2020, there's going to be the biggest global meltdown. And we didn't know how it was going to happen. And here we are with the global meltdown, economic meltdown. It's because of the coronavirus. And so to just kind of put everything in a little bow and tie, it's like when you say, what's the age of Aquarius? It was ushered in with the coronavirus. It was happening before the coronavirus, but it got ushered in. And it's really at the heart of it, Kev. The age of Aquarius is our ability to ascend humanity to a brand new frequency that is centered around the collective, centered around technology, very much technological based. AI, robots, the things that may seem scary, but another thing we talked about is, as people of color, we need to be in those jobs. We need to be designing these programs. We need to be doing, like, we need to be on the front line developing what the age of Aquarius is going to be looking like. I'm going to do my part as a spiritualist, and I'm also a technologist. Everyone needs to do their part in recognizing how they can be influencing the age of Aquarius, because you're like, what is the age of Aquarius? And the age of Aquarius is what you and I make it. Like we are writing history. It's not like things are being done to us. We are we manifested coronavirus. It didn't just happen to us. Like, we collectively did that. So we collectively have to also manifest what the age of Aquarius is going to look like. And so I just want to riff with you, like me saying this, like, what are some thoughts that are coming up around just me talking about corona, the little things I said about the age of Aquarius. I could say more later, but I just want to give you time to kind of riff with me around what you're hearing, and like you were going, oh, and like your responses to what I'm saying, like what is that triggering for you in the communities that you've been connecting with? Or like, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Well, when you think about it, like when you talk about Pisces, right? The Pisces was an individualistic age. Like there's the light and there's the dark. So I really love how you brought up in the beginning, like in the beginning of Pisces, that's when you had Jesus. That's when you had Buddha, all these spiritual leaders and prophets coming up out on the scene. But obviously we had a darkness in Pisces, and the darkness in Pisces obviously was the Dark Ages, transatlantic slave trade, all the wars, World War I, World War II, a nuclear atom bomb ever being used, right? And we've had, you know, the United States and its racist history, etc., and many other Western countries, European countries being oppressive to African, Asian, third world countries. So we had those things going on. And one part, when you said the individualism part, I see that a lot when in this shift, when we're looking at, when I'm on social media, especially Instagram. And I've always had an issue in the past decade when social media became popular, which was, it was developing this me behavior. I'm out here doing me. You know, even when we start coming up with slogans, YOLO, you only live once. The idea where the ego feels like you're separate from other people. This is my thing, I'm separate. When we even look at our family structures, our relationships, where people were in relationships for their own individual gain. Like, well, I got my man, I got my girl, I got my partner, I'm doing me. You know what I'm saying? So I always felt like, man, what is going on? What is happening here? And it really was almost on steroids in the past decade. It was like, what is, you know, New Decades, we dropped an album around 2011, 2012 called Arrogance. And we took a collage of all the things we felt was arrogant in this era, because we spelled the ERA against, and we put it as the cover, right? And we just took everything that we were seeing, man, like the gold chains, the presidents and all that. And we were like, and people asked us, what does arrogance mean? We said, for some reason, we feel like in this era that we live in, there's a lot of arrogance, which comes with the individualism, the I'm better than everybody, I'm my own God, I don't need spiritual, I don't need a collective decision. And now, as that has took a turn, I'm noticing even certain people on their social media is like, yo, for the past 10 years, all I cared about was what Gucci belt I was wearing, what plane I was getting on, how I'm traveling. Now I'm realizing none of that even matters anymore. I don't even,
Yeah, I mean, and I just wanted to jump in because no, what you're speaking to is so true, Kev. Like, here's the thing, the age of Pisces that we just left out of, again, you hit the head on the nail. Jesus, all these different spiritual leaders emerging, but guess what else happened? What you spoke to, the weaponizing of spirituality, specifically the weaponizing of religion. And what that produced in people. So it's like, and what we see now is we are like at the very tail end gates of the age of Pisces, right? We're going into the age of Aquarius. We're in the mestismo. We're in the middle of leaving one era to the other. Another thing you brought up, social media. What did you see? Like there was all this influence on influencers, like all of this emphasis on influencers, right? And now what we're seeing today is actually people are throwing influencers under the bus because we're leaving the age of Pisces. We don't need little baby Jesuses. We don't need people to look up to. Like age of Aquarius is that there's nobody at the top. It's all like blockchain technology, right? That's blockchain technology. There's no centralized bank. Age of Pisces. Blockchain technology, age of Aquarius. You know what I mean? Bitcoin, age of Aquarius.
Aquarius, wow.
So it's like we're going, and so it's breaking down like just this centralized leadership. Even people, and like, come on, like even things that we can even agree upon that, you know, really shifted social justice out of Oakland, the Black Panthers, they still were operating on the age of Pisces because they were able to lead it, like Martin Luther King, all these people, they were able to take out these one leaders, right?
Right.
But now it's like, now you have these organizations such as like people are, you know, the Antifa,
Antifa.
Yeah, the Antifa. So they don't have leaders, you know, it's like they get it. They get like how to be effective is to not have a leader, to kind of like not have anybody, like there's no, I mean, say what you want about this group of people, but they understand how to use the age of Aquarius technology. How do we adapt that thinking towards our movements that are bringing in more light and resources for our community? That's the question that I want to ask. I'm curious about it. I don't know. Our community knows, but we have to first understand what's happening spiritually and what energies we're working with. Because if we're trying to like go back to normal, right, which I think is like as we talk, like as we go towards the end of this interview, like what is the new normal? The new normal is not going to be going back to the way things were, because if you know too much now, and you know that now we're like, okay, age of Aquarius, these are the things that need to be shifting in my life. Like, what does that look like for our community? You know what I mean? And like, have you had time to chew on that since we've been talking? Like, what could you, if you were to just throw out like just a couple of just ideas based on our conversation about what coronavirus has done, how it's transformed our communities, how people are really struggling financially, but also that there's energies now that if people shifted their energy, what I mean by shifting your energy is, Kev, I mean that if you work with the energies that are available, things work better for you than if you try to go against them. If you're trying to go to what was before, you're going to get a lot of resistance. It's going to be hard. Those structures don't even work anymore. So it's like, what is this new place that our communities can go towards to be prepared? And how do we help them release resistance if there is resistance? Because we don't have time for resistance. We have to go with the flow, and we have to actually build the flow. We have to create the future. And from a ground level perspective, like how do we navigate and organize communities using these spiritual frameworks that we are speaking of to get them to be prepared for the age of Aquarius and for having like not missing the boat. Hate to say it, but like I feel like with the startup world, I feel like we missed the boat. We didn't get the startup world, and it blew up all around us, and we were left without resource. And so it's like we have another chance at hitting the reset button. How do we ride the wave appropriately where we have what we need, given the spiritual kind of background that we're working with?
I think those are great questions, and if you would, I want to also throw out too, we missed the wave with gentrification. You know, we at this point, from all the cities across the United States and the world, you know, the Bay Area, LA, New York, even London, even Rio de Janeiro, we talk about gentrification, and I remember hearing like, man, we missed that boat. Gentrification happened a long time ago. We're complaining about it as we're already displaced. We were supposed to complain about it when they were trying to buy the business. So in the sense of what we need to do, I would like to throw out there things that come in my mind is there is a lot of fear in third world communities about even technology. I know right now I'm hearing a lot of my own people who are like, they trying to do digital this, they trying to do this, they trying to get us, like the paranoia, everybody's coming for us, after us. I don't want to do that. Let's stick to, I feel like, I'm like, yo, we really need to be vigilant and really educate ourselves. And we need to have our educators educate us too. Like, yo, don't fear this. Even the fear of what's going on. The idea that when it first started, I had so many students who were scared and they were saying they're scared, which is rightfully so. And I kept telling them, do not be afraid. Everything's going to be okay. It's going to feel a little chaotic. It's going to feel a little weird at first because it's different. It's not that it's bad. It's because it's different. Because again, you're used to being on social media. You're used to going to the movies whenever you want. You're used to copping that plane ticket and going where you want. And now you can't. You got to take a break. That's the fear part. It's not that. I was telling my students, like, y'all not going to die. like y'all going to be all right. One of the main things is now collectivism, especially in a country where collectivism is not promoted or taught in the culture. We are in a culture in a country where it is very much individualism, even when you live in your community. And I think that's the things that has made it very difficult. One of the things that has made it very difficult on our family situations, our community situations, the idea of individualism. I got to get mine. We're in a impoverished neighborhood, so I got to survive and get mine and do what I got to do. I don't really care what you're talking about over there. I don't care if I'm selling drugs to you or this, that. Now there's a time where it's like, yo, we all have to work together. We all have to work together and identify everybody's gift and start working with the gift. So like, for example, if we're all in a community working together, I know this person is very good at agriculture. Somehow they're just naturally good at it. Yo, help us with the growing fruits. I know this person's good at fighting or martial arts, security. I know this person's good at logistics and look good at logistics, accounting, putting things together. We have to identify who is what, and everybody has to work together as a collective now. We have to look at each other like it's crazy, right? But we have to look at each other all like one big giant family. And that's and realize I'm not separate from you anymore.
Yeah.
Not the idea that, because I tell people, I'm like, when they say, oh man, that's them over there, or this, I'm like, that's your ego, because you just feel like you're separate. Your ego wants you to feel like you're separate from them, but this false projection itself. All of that has to die. Right. The idea that in America, the privilege of I'm going to go where I want to go and do what I want to do because it's vacation time, have fun. No, it's like, if you don't need to be in that place, you don't really have to go. Right. You're just wasting energy, time, and resources. I'm going to Jamaica for what? Because I feel like it, because I can. Why? I'm finna move to Ghana. Why are you moving to Ghana? Because I just don't like you here no more, and I just want to have fun and live somewhere else. That's the mindset of, I want to use up space. Right?
I feel like you're bringing up some really, really juicy points. You don't even know, you're not like even into astrology like this, but I mean, there's one aspect I want to say as we start to close down the interview, but literally on Friday, June 5th, we have the new moon. We have a full moon in Sagittarius. And I want to bring that up because Sagittarius is literally the energy of your beliefs. It's your higher beliefs. It's like, it's Gemini's energy of your mindset. It's like how you think things through, but the opposite on the axis of that is Sagittarius, which is your higher beliefs. And what you're talking about is actually really what's happening astrologically. Right now, we're having an eclipse. It's an eclipsed full moon in Sagittarius. And there's an aspect called the South Node, which means basically full moons are about letting go. It's about letting go to be regenerated in a cycle. And what you're speaking to, Kev, is so funny because if we were to interpret that, letting go of higher beliefs about what you need to do and why you need to do it, which is exactly what you just said. What we're going to find, astrologers are predicting this year, because of this eclipse cycles that we're going to be in with this, the South Node in Sagittarius, people are going to be restricted. Sagittarius also represents going to foreign countries, represents getting on a plane and traveling to foreign places. And that restriction is actually reinforced by this particular full moon and all the subsequent eclipses that are happening this year. So what does that mean is that the most imperative and important thing that's going to come down the pike is local engagement. Gemini represents where you can travel in your car. It represents your local community. It's the archetype of your neighbors, your siblings, your cousins. It's people around you. And it's honest. So it's like my prediction around what we need to do and what's going to happen if we work with astrology and we bring that into our communities. Astrology is giving us permission to build villages locally, to create community locally, move away from the cities, and to create opportunity, because a lot of people can work from home more than ever. So this, for me, what I'm hearing, what I'm sensing, what Spirit is telling me is this is the opportunity to pivot from living in these type of spaces. And for some people, they're like, well, I can't afford to do that. Well, if you say that as your mantra, then you'll never afford to do that. As we just said, we collectively manifested coronavirus by saying we're lonely. So if you say I'm abundant, that's a whole nother show on how to manifest things. But all this to say, I believe that this is going to bring us back into so funny. Okay, sorry. This is going to bring us back into releasing loneliness because we're going to be in community again.
Word.
This is how spirituality works, man. So let me run this through you, Kevin. So We said we were lonely. We got the coronavirus. It isolated us. It like helped us to raise our frequency. We realized we needed a rest and a break. We also saw what was broken in this capitalistic system. We were like, why don't we just live off the land and build some housing and live in little communities and grow food? And now I'm not lonely anymore. The end.
Right.
You know, it's like, and like there's other, I don't want to get too complicated. There's other astrology that supports us moving into lands, building tiny homes. That's a whole, I need a whole nother show just to break that down. But all this is to say, like, that's from my perspective, overlaid on what you're sharing around like what you're seeing and hearing. There's a really big gap between those two perspectives. Like what you shared about being afraid of technology, being afraid of all these things. My perspective of like, yeah, like it's going to be technology, but it's also going to be like moving. It's going to be actually untechnical, because it's about using technology, being able to work remotely to then be able to move locally into housing in situations where you're not lonely anymore, where you feel like you could meet with people and connect. And the exposure to virus is low because you're not living in a city. You're like living with your people. So, I mean, these are just some ideas to just riff with, but it's just been such a joy, like hearing your perspective. And
I've been thinking this for a minute. So I was like, it's like, am I the only one thinking this? I hear other people talking about it too. So
no, and I hope you understand. I hope questions were answered. I hope you have. I heard some ums and ahs in there, and I've been getting like,
just confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, I feel confirmed too. It's like I really love like the layers of the way social justice and spirituality dovetail. And yeah, we have to have these realistic conversations. Like, what does this realistically look like? And so I appreciate this. Hopefully, this is food for thought for a lot of people watching. And would love to have you back on the show in the future, because you're just bringing all sorts of brilliance and dropping all sorts of wisdom, and just really appreciating you for being a leader in our community.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the show. Part of me was like, dang, so 2,000 more years, it's going to be the age of Capricorn. What that look like? That's another story. I was like, what does that represent? Whoa.
I know, right? I'm like, wait, we just now entering, we just now strolling into that Aquarius. But I know, like that, I mean, right? Only our reincarnated beings will know what that looks like. But yeah, thank you for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate you.
All good. Just hit me up next time you need me again, man. This is great. I love it.
And listeners, what did you love about this week's show? What did you resonate with? Be in conversation. Resonate with other people in the chats and the live feed. And let's stay connected and let's have this conversation. What do you think the age of Aquarius represents? All right, we'll see you back here next week. Peace.
All right, peace.